Welcome to the video, guys. Guess what's back again? The good old Project Fear. This time led by Hilary Benn, who, like Jeremy Corbyn, is no better than a fart in a spacesuit and obviously won't go away and will just sit there lingering on, making everyone feel sick. Well, as you would expect, he is back ramoning his life away on the usual Project Fear nonsense that has become so common now I think it's like breathing oxygen for these people, but I could be wrong. Anyway, today he has been crying about the border and apparent smuggling that could well happen after Brexit, which is just nonsense considering the border force is actively helping people smugglers bring people into the UK with the taxi service that we have called out a few times on the channel now, and Nigel Farage himself has gone out and videoed as we've all seen before. Now, not only that, this border nonsense was debunked last year by the Port of Dover, who literally said it is an online form that they have 6 months to complete, so there will be no queues, there will be no need to stop, and there certainly won't be any checks. All of this can be done much the same way as it is now. Like we've said, this is just Project Fear that was debunked a long time ago. Well, the Express have picked up on this, and they've also picked up on Peterbone calling him out and this Project Fear nonsense for the complete and utter codswallop that it actually is. But before we get into that, guys, I have moved my daily live streams over to Twitch. The link is down below in the video description. Now, back to the fart in a spacesuit, Hilary Benn. The Express article headlines, Remainer Hilary Benn warns UK not ready for Brexit as he demands border plan urgently. Now, I have to say, it is funny hearing demands coming from someone who's part of a party who just suffered the worst defeat in 85 years last year at the last election. Thanks to the people of this country, it is quite laughable, but not surprising considering how entitled this arsehole thinks he is. Labour MP Hilary Benn hit out at the government over fears that Boris Johnson's UK-EU border plan could lead to huge problems at ports for the 6 months before full checks come into play. Michel Barnier has confirmed there will be customs controls in the EU from January 1st, even though the UK won't be ready for full border checks until July. This has sparked fears that there could be chaos on the UK border for 6 months post-Brexit, especially following a leaked letter from Liz Truss raising similar concerns. Labour's Hilary Benn, chair of the future relationship with the EU committee, warned BBC Newsnight that a border plan was needed very urgently. He said, I think the much bigger question is, as one witness put it to us, we're not ready and we're not entirely sure what we need to be ready for. At the start of the year, Michael Gove told businesses there would be full checks in place from January 1st. Now, who is this so-called witness that says we are not ready and we're not entirely sure what to be ready for? It sounds like the unnamed source coming from The Guardian, much like we see in relation to Boris Johnson's chief advisor, Dominic Cummings, over his little trip to Durham, as you will all remember, was a thing a month or so ago. Remember, whether there's an agreement or there isn't an agreement, these checks are going to be happening. Yet, in June, the government said when it comes to goods coming into the UK from the EU, we're not going to have full checks from the start of the year. That was an admission that we aren't ready, or an admission that we don't need it. Since most of it comes through without these checks anyway, they lack the time to check everything that is coming through, you complete and utter idiot. Mr. Benn continued, why is that a problem? When goods come in, they need to be checked. Anyone who's been to Dover knows the lorries come off the ferries and they're on the motorway and there isn't any room to pull any lorries aside and check them. Oh, so he admits there that they don't get checked, like there's no smuggling from EU countries into the UK and vice versa. Saying to me that he 100% knows that not all goods are checked and only some are checked, which is of course intelligence-based, as we will hear from Peterbone afterwards. We took evidence that the government thinks they will have to build new facilities to do those inward checks, but they haven't built them yet. Then we have the other problem, which is goods leaving the UK going into the EU, where the checks, as Michel Barnier made clear, will start from January 1st. That is on the EU, there's nothing we can do about that. You know, they have the right to make their own decisions the same way we do, now we have got Brexit. Which is obviously what this snivelling shitweasel is so salty about, coming on TV moaning about this, and what a surprise that it's Newsnight airing his nonsense. That is going to cost businesses money because filling in a customs declaration and other paperwork will give them an expense that they don't have at the moment. It's the last thing they need when they're having to cope with the coronavirus. Well, the chief of Dover actually last year completely destroyed that Project Fear narrative, stating that customs declaration forms are already done online and you have 6 months to fill them out, so there is absolutely no rush. 99% of trade from around the world comes through within minutes and the other 1% takes at most 2 hours usually, reality, with the odd exception of course. So, like I've said, this is all just complete and utter nonsense, and yet more Project Fear not based in reality. I'm pretty sure it doesn't cost that much money to fill out one form and you got 6 months to do it, so Hilary Benn, I think you really need to come up with some better bullshit for your Project Fear nonsense. The Labour MP added, the government has also said it wants to establish something called a Vehicle Movement Service, an IT system. It hasn't actually been built yet. They're still consulting on what it should look like. And once again, them wanting to do something doesn't mean shit. It's not like they have to do it or it's a requirement to get anything done. That is just something they want to do as an added system. Whether it will be any good or not remains to be seen. That's probably why they're looking into it. They want to do that because they don't want lorries to arrive at Dover heading for Calais without the correct paperwork, because then the whole system will be backed up. Well, this government's been going on about what businesses need to do in their approach to Calais over the last 9 months, so once again, this is more Project Fear that has been debunked and already gone over. The information is actually on the government's website. Hilary Benn continued, we've only got 5 months to go and businesses are saying, for heaven's sake, what are we meant to be planning for? What is this system going to be? What forms do I need to fill in? That's why we need to see the government's border plan next week, very urgently. Which, let me guess, these businesses are some Remain supporting businesses that might have been throwing him a little bit of funding. I would suggest it's definitely possible, because obviously he didn't name them personally, much like the unnamed sources of The Guardian that we compared him to earlier. In the reportedly leaked letter, the International Trade Secretary privately raises concerns that Boris Johnson's plans could lead to smuggling from the EU and face a legal challenge from the WTO. Mistrust claims the plans could break international trading rules and harm the UK's reputation. However, Mr. Benn dismissed the idea. I'm less concerned about the WTO because their dispute resolution mechanism has some problems at the moment. Now, as I said, Peter Bone had to shut down the BBC over this leaked letter on the post-Brexit border fears, which have already been done many times before, so I won't go over the whole article. We will just go through a couple of important bits of it. The EU Commission has unveiled its plan for the end of the Brexit transition period, prompting concerns about the UK-EU border arrangements. Despite being set to leave the EU at the end of the year, the UK has announced that full border controls on goods will not come into effect until next July. Conservative MP Peter Bone rubbished concerns that the delay could lead to the risk of smuggling when he was confronted by a leaked letter from Liz Truss on BBC Newsnight. Now, I wonder who in the civil service actually leaked that letter. Of course, it's going to be someone. Mr. Bone dismissed concerns about smuggling for the 6 months post-Brexit period. He also clarified that he had not seen the letter and wasn't sure if it had been confirmed as written by Miss Truss, which probably it hasn't. Mr. Bone told the BBC, "You're saying as though Liz Truss definitely said this. Imagine it actually comes out that they didn't. You will watch the BBC backtracking sneakily on their website pretty fast, but I doubt they will actually put it on the TV. We know what they're like. The truth of the matter is, you don't catch smugglers by a chap at the border with a peak cap or looking under the tarpaulin of a lorry and saying, you shouldn't have that stuff, we caught you. Smuggling, as I said earlier, is detected by intelligence, and that will continue as always. So the idea that there would be an increased smuggling risk, I think, is really wrong. That really, I thought, is a very weak argument to challenge the government's case, which we know is all these Ramonas can do with their nonsensical Project Fear. Weak arguments and baseless claims of anything that pops into their head. And obviously the rest of it just goes on about Hilary Benn, which we've already gone through. So as I said at the beginning, Hilary Benn is still there complaining about Brexit, much like Jeremy Corbyn, a fart in a spacesuit that will never go away, and you will have to smell the disgusting smell of it for the rest of time, it would appear. At least the Conservative MP, Peter Bone, was there to shut him down, but let's be honest, the government are helping smuggling people into this country every single day. As I've said, I've called it out many times before, but as usual, Labour are not moaning about that, they're complaining about pointless shit, because of course they want the new voters. But as always, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who supports the channel, and my other social media links are down in the video description if you want to come and support me on Twitter, BitChute, and a variety of other platforms, including my second YouTube channel. As I said, all links are down in the video description.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors. Slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires. And that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going and we are glad to be going. We're off.